Welcome to the Alex Salmond Show, and the first of 3 special programmes on the future of Ireland, and in particular, the future of Ireland in Europe post-Brexit. This week, a new women political party leader was elected in these islands. Mary Lou McDonald has a Scottish name and indeed ancestry, but on Sunday, she became president, or Uachtaráin, of Sinn Fein in succession to the long-serving Gerry Adams. Alex has been to Dublin for a major interview with the new leader to discover what her election means for the politics of Ireland, north and south. But first, let's hear from you with your tweets, your messages and your emails. There's been a fantastic response to last week's show, which featured the amazing rugby legend Doddy Weir. Here are a few of your tweets. William says, great show this morning. Interview with Doddy, an informative personal interview about living with MND and his rugby career. Graham Patty says, a moving and inspirational show today. Big Doddy Weir talking about his MND and explaining how he's trying to do something about it, not just for him, but for all sufferers. Well done, Doddy, and so say all of us. Dougie says, just watched Alex Salmond's interview of Doddy Weir at Murrayfield Stadium, broadcast today. Excellent TV, where Doddy talks about his rugby playing days and then openly and candidly about his fight with MND. Shell says in response to Doddy's own tweet, in fact, after the first show, Doddy tweeted, we're back on again at 6:30 p.m. Hope I'm as good as I was this morning. Well, yes, Doddy, you were. And in response to that, Shell says, first Alex Salmond show I've watched. Took the legend that's Doddy Weir to get me there. Best wishes, Doddy. Here's hoping your foundation can help find a cure for this horrible condition. Idem says, just watched your interview with Doddy Weir. What an inspiration. Wishing you all the best. Shada Tyra says, great interview on the show. Well done. Finally, Stuart Weir says, in response to Doddy actually, if you're presented with another quake at the end of the Alex Salmond show, can I auction it? Well, I don't know what Doddy's response was to you, but from all of us here, we're happy to send you another quake for auction. And now to Ireland. On this show, as the name suggests, Alex, of course, bags all of the good jobs. And over the last few days, he's been spending a great deal of time in Ireland's capital of Dublin. Over our next 3 episodes, he conducts major interviews with Irish politicians, including former Taoiseach or Prime Minister Bertie Ahern, and with former Uachtaráin of the Republic, Mary McAleese. However, first he spoke with the woman of the moment, the newly elected president of Sinn Fein, Mary Lou McDonald. Here's Alex with his report from Dublin.
St Stephen's Green, one of the most famous locations in Dublin's fair city. 100 years ago, Sinn Féin held a majority of parliamentary seats across the island of Ireland. Last weekend, they elected Mary Lou McDonald as president of Sinn Féin. She's the first Sinn Féin leader not to be associated with the armed struggle. So could once again Sinn Féin be challenging for power across the island of Ireland? Until the Easter Rising of 1916, Sinn Féin had little success. However, all was changed, and changed utterly, by the repressive British response to the Rising. Sinn Féin started to win by-elections, and in the 1918 UK general elections swept Ireland in a landslide victory. Only in the 6 counties which were to form Northern Ireland did unionism still hold sway. After the establishment by treaty of the Irish Free State and the Civil War which followed, Sinn Féin effectively split into the 2 parties which were to dominate the politics of Ireland for the rest of the century. One party, which became Fine Gael, came from the pro-treaty wing of nationalism, led by Michael Collins, and the Republican Fianna Fáil party of Eamon de Valera. Meanwhile, Sinn Féin was reduced to a political rump, increasingly associated with the armed struggle of the IRA in Northern Ireland, particularly as the Troubles swept through the province from 1969. However, some 20 years ago, Sinn Féin and the Democratic Unionists led the paramilitaries on both sides into a peace process which holds to this day. Gradually, Sinn Féin have eclipsed the constitutional nationalists of the SDLP in the elections in the north, while in the 2016 election for the Dáil in Dublin, achieved its best results since the 1920s, emerging to challenge the Irish old firm of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. Now the question is, under its new leader, Mary Lou McDonald, can Sinn Féin finally overtake the Democratic Unionists in the north and emerge once again as a governing party in the Republic? Mary Lou McDonald, you're now officially the leader of Sinn Féin. Tell me a bit about your own background, how you came into politics. You're a Dublin girl.
I am. I'm a Dublin woman, Alex, even. And I came into politics in some ways almost accidentally. I came into sort of official political activism and running for elections and so on as a result of my interest in domestic politics, what was going on in the north, an eye to international politics. But I had never planned this as the end point, if you like, of my political journey. I grew up in Dublin. I come from what would be considered to be, I suppose, a typically middle-class background. I was very lucky. I've had good educational opportunities, a good chance at things in life. And I came into Sinn Fein. Actually, my husband always tells the story that when he met me first, I was a student. Then I got a very good job when I came out of university. I left that and I went working for the trade unions, which meant that my income dropped. I then left the trade unions to work for Sinn Fein, which meant that my income dropped again. And he said to me, "Now you need to stop that, because the next thing is you'll be going to work and you'll have to pay them to show up." So I'm the kind of person that goes on political instinct and things that I believe in, and I passionately believe in social justice. I believe in Irish unity. I believe in getting things done. I believe that rather than sitting on the sidelines and giving out, that if you actually want to live in a better country, if you want to live in a better world, there's actually a responsibility on you to go and do something about that. So that's how, long story short, I got involved in political activism.
Sinn Féin wasn't your first choice of party. You were involved in Fianna Fáil.
When I came of age, the politics that I knew and the political atmosphere that I was accustomed to or comfortable in was Fianna Fáil. I discovered very quickly that that was exactly the wrong place for me to be, because I'm an Irish nationalist, I'm a United Irelander, but I am also a person who believes that social justice and equality is the other side of that coin. What good freedom, if not an equal Ireland? So for me, Sinn Féin blended perfectly and still does that concern for self-determination, for freedom, but also a very keen sense of building an equal society and giving people not just rhetorical lip service around opportunity or prosperity, but actually making those realities in people's lives.
But the Sinn Féin tradition of strong women leaders stretches right back, I suppose, to Constance Markievicz 100 years ago, the first woman elected to the House of Commons, but of course, as an abstentionist, never took her seat.
You mentioned Markievicz there. I mean, a giant of Irish history, a phenomenal woman who 100 years ago, this year, was elected to the House of Parliament, but who was in jail at the time, and who in any event was an abstentionist politician. And just like Sinn Féin MPs now, we don't take our seats. We continue in that tradition, because for us, Irish political decisions are to be made rightfully in Ireland for Irish people. And then so many other women down through the years. And it would be fair to say that although the perception of Sinn Féin correctly has been of a very male party, because Irish politics, sadly, has been very male, there has always been a strong cohort of women in leadership positions in Sinn Féin. I think what's changed now is that more of us are in public representative roles and public leadership roles. Now, I'm very proud to serve in that same tradition as Markievicz and Mairead Drum and Margaret Buckley and so many others. And I'm very humbled to be the woman who in modern Ireland now leads from the front and is the Uachtarán Sinn Féin.
Now, last month, when you accepted nomination as president of Sinn Féin, you famously said that you weren't going to try and fill Gerry Adams' shoes because you'd brought your own. What did you mean by that exactly?
I suppose I meant two things. Firstly, that Gerry Adams has defined, I believe, Irish political life for a generation. He is a person without whom the peace process, I believe, would not have happened. The person who charted in a very concrete way the democratic pathway to Irish freedom. The person and the leader who managed to bring the IRA relatively intact on that journey, and a person who stayed very, very true to his background, to his tradition, whilst at the same time being an incredible radical in terms of modernising the Sinn Fein party and building it from the ground up. So he is, as they say, some act to follow. And I won't fill his shoes. I won't be attempting to. But then I don't need to, because I have my own, as you say. And because I think it is so important for anybody coming into political leadership to have a sense of their own journey, to have a sense of their own identity, their own generation in leadership. And I think particularly for women, because it is still something of a novelty to have women in the most senior of leadership roles. And I am the person that I am. I'm a Dubliner of a certain generation. I have consequently a view that is different from my predecessor on many things, a different approach. And I think it's very, very important to sound out that sense of, I suppose, novelty and change from the very beginning.
Now, you rightly say that Gerry Adams brought Sinn Féin to supporting a peaceful path to Irish unity. But it's still the case that you're the first Sinn Féin leader who hasn't been associated with the armed struggle or the Troubles more recently. Do you think that is a significant opportunity for departure and growth for your party?
It's certainly a change, and I think it is a reflection of the success, the political successes that have accrued over the past 20 years and more, that you have, as you say, me as a leader of Sinn Féin, the leader of the Irish Republican movement with no association with the Troubles or the conflict. But also you now have a whole generation of people who have been born on this island who never lived one day of conflict in Ireland. A generation of children born in Belfast and Derry and in the glens of Antrim, for whom talk about the Troubles and the conflict is the stuff of history books. Now, don't get me wrong, some of the consequences and the pain of that conflict is still here, and we still need to deal with that. But that is a mighty change. An entire generation of young people who have come up and who have no experience of British soldiers on the streets or armed actions by IRA volunteers or the UVF or the UDA. And that is a massive transformation and something that's extremely positive, very good reflection. So yes, it is a change. I'm also from what they call the South, even though I'm from the East Coast. Dublin's actually on the east, not in the south. But so for Sinn Féin, very often associated as a northern party, a party of the north, I think it's now clear that we are truly a national organisation. I mean, that's always been the case. But as we grow in political strength right across the provinces of Ireland, and now that the leader is a Dub, I think that kind of writes that up in lights in a way that perhaps wasn't the case before.
Welcome back to Dublin, where I'm speaking to Mary Lou McDonald, the newly elected president of Sinn Féin. Has she found the key to taking Sinn Féin into power in the Republic of Ireland? 30 years of troubles, 20 years of peace. But of course now a Brexit process, which some people believe is a fundamental danger to the peace process. How do you evaluate that danger?
Brexit and the Good Friday Agreement are mutually incompatible. You cannot have Brexit, you cannot have a forcing of the north of Ireland out of the European Union on the one hand, and still claim to honour in word and spirit and letter the Good Friday Agreement. It is, in our view, as stark as that. And I listened to Theresa May, and I listened to others from the English Tories saying that don't worry about the border in Ireland. Ireland will be fine, on the one hand, and then insisting that Britain will leave the customs union, leave the single market, and so on. And of course, the reality is that those two positions are completely at odds with each other. I think the Tories have played a very dangerous game. No way can Ireland, or should Ireland, or will Ireland be the collateral damage in the midst of all of that. The idea of reimposing a border on the island is not just economically disruptive, it potentially jeopardises the entire political infrastructure of the Good Friday Agreement. The executive itself in the North and the Assembly, the northern institutions, are built on, are premised on the notion of European standards and regulations and law. So this is a big problem for us. Brexit is a disaster, in my view, generally, if I can offer that view. I respect absolutely the rights of other countries to make their own decisions. I think Brexit is a mistake. From an Irish perspective, it's dangerous. I think it is gratuitous the way in which the British government has disregarded us. By the way, we have said this to Mrs May, so I'm not saying anything, as it were, behind her back that we're not quite prepared to put to the British government.
Well, that wouldn't put you in the same category as some of our cabinet ministers then.
So I believe. But that's it. I'm perhaps more straightforward.
The breaking of the Good Friday Agreement in letter or spirit, is that the same thing as the ending of the peace process, or was still a return to violence and disorder?
The war is over, and there is no purchase, no sentiment at all that I see that wishes for a return to any form of political violence at all. I think it would be a very, very foolish person and a truly foolish government that would gamble or that would take unnecessary risks with all of that. I believe the peace process is robust. I believe that certainly Irish nationalism is growing in confidence, is very much at ease and happy with the general momentum and direction of political traffic. I am conscious that some of our unionist brothers and sisters are perhaps not as secure or happy with all of that. But generally, I think it's fair to say that there is no appetite for conflict.
So what are the other political consequences of Brexit? There is provision, of course, within the peace accords for a referendum in Northern Ireland under certain circumstances in Irish unity. Is it your opinion that Brexit Britain makes such a referendum very likely or indeed inevitable at some stage?
I think it demonstrated very clearly just how vulnerable the north of Ireland is within the Union. Because let's face it, the people in the north voted to stay. And yet that could be totally disregarded and overruled. A scenario where investment into Ireland, the economic activity right across the island, people born on the island of Ireland who take for granted the fact that they can do simple things like travel throughout Europe. Like Europe is people's hinterland now. People have grown up with access for education, for work and so on.
But even unionist politicians are advising people to
get
apply
Irish
for
passports. Well, precisely,
Yes,
precisely. Because these are things that people value. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it makes Irish unity inevitable, but I certainly think it underscores the common sense of a united Ireland, the common sense of actually managing our own political affairs and not allowing other forces beyond you to actually overrule and override decisions, democratic decisions made by the people. I think it sets that out very clearly.
And how closely do you watch the political developments in the other Celtic nations, Wales and Scotland, and the campaign by the Welsh and Scottish First Minister together to keep their nations within the context of the single market? Mm-hmm. Do you see within that development something that might provide a different arrangement for the various communities of this island?
The evidence so far is that, in fact, Number 10 cares very little for what any of the devolved administrations think on any of these matters. And I think it would be a good day's work for a little bit of humility to enter into the equation, perhaps in terms of the Tory government, and to actually allow those voices and perspectives in, and to listen and to hear when Scotland tells you what Scotland understands to be in her best interests, what Scotland needs to survive, to thrive and to advance. And likewise for the Welsh. I think it would be wiser for the British system to listen to that. Here's the distinction for us though. The heavy lifting to protect Ireland will have to be done by the government in Dublin. That's a reality. Dublin will be at the table as an equal European partner when all of these matters are debated and negotiated and discussed and decided. And we've said consistently to the Taoiseach, to the Taoiseach, that their responsibility and duty of care doesn't stop at Dundalk, that it goes into the north of Ireland, and that we, as a country and as an island, have to understand our fortune in this regard is completely interlinked.
As a new leader of Sinn Fein, when you look at the strong influence, the decisive position that the Democratic Unionists, with only a handful of MPs now have in the House of Commons, are you tempted to reverse the abstentionist policy and make a foray into the Palace of Westminster and upset the Brexit apple cart?
No. And I would not say that the DUP have what I would understand or consider to be a position of huge strength. I think they find themselves at a particular moment in time with a particular mathematical relationship. Now, don't get me wrong, I think this confidence and supply arrangement between the Tories and the DUP is wrong. I think it absolutely compromises the British government's claims to impartiality or independence. I think it is highly problematic from that point of view. But I think it's a stretch to say that therefore the DUP are all dominating and that they hold all of the cards. And actually, when you talk to unionists in the north of Ireland, there's a very clear sense that, you know, governments in London will avail of unionist support and then dispense with it as and when it's pragmatic for them to do so. So that's, to me, a very short-term arrangement.
What are you offering the people of the South that the older parties, let's describe them as that, the more conventional parties, can't offer?
Well, the conventional parties, the older parties, have had it all their own way since the 1920s, really, when you think about it. It's been the politics of Tweedledum and Tweedledee. So the two big beasts of Irish politics, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, sort of swap roles. What do we offer? Well, we are a party that is not in the back pocket of any vested interests. We've had a whole history in this jurisdiction of corruption, of corrupted institutions, and the consequential loss of confidence in public life and political life. I think we can be, in fact, I think we are a new broom, even though we're Ireland's oldest political party, to sweep some of that clean. We argue for investment in public services and generating a prosperity that isn't just about creating wealthy Ireland that looks good statistically. You know, the right GDP, the right GNP, you know, the ratios looking smart. We talk about a prosperity that is lived and that is shared.
And how would you describe the politics of Sinn Féin on a left-right spectrum?
Oh, we're of the left. We're very decidedly of the left. And we're a Republican left. So we're about freedom and we are about equality. We believe that citizens have rights. We believe that it's the duty of the state and of good government to vindicate those rights.
But what is Sinn Féin's route to power? The other parties, the established parties, the duopoly as you put it, they say they won't deal with Sinn Féin. That's been their historic position. You're in a proportional system. To get to power, you probably have to have coalition allies. Now, it takes two to tango. How are you going to get there?
The first thing we have to do is we have to get a sufficient mandate. Sometimes it amuses me, you know, you hear politicians saying, oh no, we won't entertain you, or we won't do this, or nobody will be doing anything unless and until you have a sufficient mandate and until you win sufficient confidence of the Irish people. So the first thing we have to do is prepare for elections, prepare our political platform, and we need to go out and win hearts and minds. We need to convince people who may never have voted for Sinn Féin before that we are offering something new and hopeful and different. And I believe that we can do that. At the end of the day, whenever the election is and the votes are counted, well, then it's for other political parties to decide what position they will take. But I would just warn them against being overly arrogant or overly dismissive.
A few weeks ago, you were celebrating the 150th anniversary of the birth of Constance Markievicz. If she was looking down now, what advice would she be giving you as the new president of Sinn Fein?
I believe that she would say to me to stay true, to stay strong, to be flexible but not to settle for too little. And above all, Markievicz, who was a woman who came from privilege, but who was a lover of the poor, not least of this city, she would say, stay true to the women and the men of no property, stay true to Ireland, and you won't go too far wrong.
Well, in that case, I'm pleased to say, from Scotland, a small gift. This is a quaich, Scots Gaelic for a cup of kindness. The whisky in the quaich, round your close friends, only your close friends. And of course, one last thing, it has to be Scotch. None of the Irish stuff.
I can't promise that. Thank you so much.
Lou McDonald, thank you so much.
Fascinating stuff from Dublin. Viewers will have noticed and welcome the increasing influence of women in the political leadership of Ireland and of Scotland. Mary Lou McDonald now joins the growing list of women who have held leadership positions in the Republic, while currently in Northern Ireland, both the leaders of the Ulster Unionists and of Sinn Féin, Arlene Foster and Michelle O'Neill, are women. This is the case in Scotland, where Nicola Sturgeon as First Minister is opposed by Ruth Davidson as leader of the opposition Conservatives. In Wales and Westminster, women leaders are heavily outnumbered, with only Plaid Cymru's Leanne Wood, Caroline Lucas of the Greens, and of course Theresa May, the Prime Minister. However, even more important than Mary Lou's gender are two other political changes. Mary Lou McDonald is the first Sinn Féin leader not to be associated with the armed struggle. This may well remove the political ceiling which has previously restricted their support in the Republic. Secondly, and this is equally important, the election of this Dublin-born woman represents a move of Sinn Féin leadership from the north of Ireland to what may be termed an all-Ireland approach. It could well be that after a full century since it last happened, the next elections will see Sinn Féin challenging for the leading position in Irish politics, both north and south. The consequences for Ireland and for Ireland as a European nation would be far-reaching. So until next week, from all of us here in the studio, and of course from Alex in Dublin, we'll see you soon.